Good afternoon, all, and welcome to yet another Plus webinar. My name is Katlego Ramanzima, and I will be chairing this session. Equitable access to land is a critical issue in post-apartheid South Africa. It is essentially about broadening access to land to enable the poor to benefit from occupying and utilizing land. The Constitution of South Africa directs the state to take measures within its available resources to ensure that access to land is extended in an equitable manner to all citizens of the country. However, achieving this has been a challenge for the state, and it has resulted in rural households having limited access to productive land, whilst in urban city areas, it has resulted in growing informality and poverty. Our focus for today are the struggles conducted by ordinary South Africans in the quest to access land, not only for residential purposes, but also for economic and social purposes. Joining us today for this very important discussion is Nomsa Sizane, the General Secretary of Abahlali Basemjondolo in KwaZulu-Natal province. And also we are joined by Shakira Kwabe, a land activist based in Gauteng. And last but not least, Dr. Trevor Ngwane, a scholar activist based at the University of Johannesburg. Please do not forget to tweet about this webinar. Our hashtag is #access-to-land, #urban-land-access-now, as demonstrated on the bottom of your screen. Now, without wasting any more time, my first question would go to Nomsa Sizane. As Abahlali Basemjondolo, you have campaigned for well-situated urban land, for public housing, and also occupied unused government land. Can you take us through some of your lived experiences regarding land access and help us to understand why equitable access to land is important?
Good afternoon to you. Firstly, I'll start by introducing that Abahlali Basemjondolo is a shack dwellers movement that promotes, protects, and advances the interests of people living in shacks and also the impoverished people in South Africa. Our struggle is land, housing, and dignity, as well as our vision is to build a just society based on respect and dignity for all humankind. When we speak about the land, it is a really sensitive issue to us as Abahlali Basemjondolo. As I'm speaking right now, we have lost 18 comrades of Abahlali Basemjondolo in the struggle of land. So the state is not doing enough to ensure the equitable access to land. We have seen the money for this, for allocated for the houses stolen. And at the end of the day, there is no clear plan or program for the equitable access for land. What we have seen that only the members of the ruling party are given the preference to the housing and the job, not the general people of South Africa. And our efforts as communities who are forced into landless and homeless are rejected and attacked. So it is a failure and refusal of the state. Abahlali has embarked on a program to occupy vacant and unused land. And also we have campaigned for the basic services because we have been denied the basic services as Abahlali Basemjondolo. I think it is a form of a punishment to Abahlali Basemjondolo to deny us the basic services because we have occupied the land. Because we know exactly that when you occupy this land, we are condemning their system of capitalism. So they are denying us the basic services as Abahlali Basemjondolo. But Abahlali Basemjondolo, we have faced the state repression. We have faced the state brutality. We have faced the brutal evictions that are so brutally because we've been brutally beaten during these evictions. We have brutally killed. We have been brutally murdered. We have been brutally assassinated. Our struggle for land as Abahlali Basemjondolo has been criminalized. So most of our comrades have been unlawfully arrested for the land. As I am speaking, we've got scars for the land. The price for the land continues to be paid in blood. So as abahlali basemjondolo, we have managed to build, to occupy the land and build our own houses. We didn't end there. We did develop our communities by doing the communal gardens, by doing the communal halls, by also doing the communal creches, by also doing the political schools in our occupations. And we did manage to organize ourselves. As I'm speaking, we are sitting on 100,000 membership of Abahlali Basamjondolo who are in the occupations that we did occupy ourselves. Also, we are educating ourselves as Abahlali Basemjondolo. So we are also partnering with other grassroots organizations. Abahlali Basemjondolo, we believe in collectivism. We don't believe in individualism. That is why I am talking about the communal halls, the communal gardens. As I'm speaking, one of our settlement in Ekanana at Etequini, they do have those communal halls and also the political schools. We have seen the state repression in Cape Town. We have seen the law enforcement forcing people out of their land. We have seen the red ants in Gauteng forcing people out of their places. We have seen the land invasion unit in eThekwini forcing people out of their occupation. What we have seen in our country is that our government, they put the commercial value before the social value. The profit comes first before the people's need. So what we want as abahlali basemjondolo, we don't want to see the land being taken as a commodity. We don't want the land to be sold. Land must be shared equally to people who live in it. We refuse to see the land to be seen as a community. It should be distributed on the basic need of human. So we believe that if our government should use the bottom-up system, it could be okay in our country in South Africa, not the top-down system, the system that they are using, the top-down system. So we believe that as abahlali basemjondolo, the bottom-up system should be used. I thank you, Comrade Chair.
Thank you very much, Mam Sizane, for that. My next question then goes to Shakira Kwari. The South African Land Reform Initiative has largely been centered on rural or commercial farming context. Urban land reform is relatively under-researched or considered in the broader land reform debates. And this is one of the things which you also had told me in our discussion. I just want to know what informs your argument that urban land reform has not reached urban areas in South Africa.
Afternoon to you, Katlego, and to everyone that is watching this webinar. A quick answer to the question is definitely no. The state is not doing enough to ensure equitable access to land in urban areas. Land reform policy in this country, from the settlement and land acquisition grant in the 90s to the current one, which is the proactive land acquisition strategy, has seldom included urban areas in a meaningful way, especially for the country's metropolitan cities. In these provinces, land is viewed as a speculative asset rather than something that could possibly provide not only well-located homes for the historically dispossessed, but also as a space where families can pursue livelihood strategies and to also perhaps finally put an end to spatial apartheid planning. In the metro where I'm located, which is the city of Tshwane, we have discovered that because of apartheid special planning, some people who do domestic and garden work in the eastern suburbs of Pretoria take the option of being homeless in the city or surrounding suburbs during the week, so as to be closer to work and not waste the little money that they have traveling back and forth from work, and only go home during weekends when they're on leave or during holidays. This is understandable. I mean, when you consider the research from the GCRO about travel times that Black Africans who live in townships spend and the amount of money they spend traveling to and from work. This is important because government does provide land. When government does provide land, as the Department of Human Settlement is planning to, instead of providing RDP houses in urban areas, it usually provides this land and housing on the outskirts of the cities with little agency given to beneficiaries about this, or rather perpetuating special apartheid planning. Whilst on the other hand, well located land and housing is priced out of reach for the majority, making well located service land a commodity for the few. The Special Planning Land Use Management Act is very clear that land belonging to the state should first and foremost be used to benefit the residents of that area, but the state and municipalities actually prefer selling this prime land in order to raise money for municipal coffers. I personally believe those who occupy unused buildings and land in urban areas are practicing a very radical form of land reform, as they've taken it upon themselves to make sure the incredibly slow and imperfect special justice ends up happening in their lifetimes in urban areas. And they use these spaces to show us also an alternative form of not only land reform, but community, as Umam Sizane has articulated about what Abahlali do in KZN. It brings all concerned parties to the table, even if it's through courts, to find a lasting solution to the land question and to force urban land reform to take place. The quickest way land reform can begin at a meaningful pace and scale would be maybe to start with redistributing state land and unused buildings. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Shakira. Just a kind reminder to our audience today, please do join in the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag that is demonstrated on the bottom of your screen. My next question will go to Trevor, right? As a scholar, how does one theoretically understand these issues explained by Umamunomsa and Shakira? And what role does land reform have to ensure equitable access to land in urban areas? And how must it be implemented?
Thank you very much. I want to salute PLAS. For many years, this organization has been doing sterling work on the land question. The research on the strategy for land redistribution is very important. So the urban land question, which is we're focusing on today, is important because when people talk about land reform, they usually focus on the rural areas and think about agriculture. Of course, this is important because we need food to eat, and the food is grown mostly outside the urban areas. Now, when we turn our attention to the land question in the urban areas, as my fellow speakers have done, this is when we're immediately confronted with the biggest stumbling block to the emancipation of the people from poverty, hunger, deprivation, homelessness, disease, and all the evils that make the lives of ordinary people miserable. I mean, we all agree that in South Africa today, ordinary working class life is a life of crisis. Everything is a crisis. It's jobs, housing, services, education, income, food, healthcare, security. Every day is a struggle. For the 9 million people who live in South Africa's Emijondolo, Amagal, Amachochombe, life is very hard. In the words of Comrade Buzi Gote, the leader of Abahlala Emjondolo, there is no holiday in the shacks. Now, the real problem is not Zuma, it's not Ramaphosa, it's not even the ANC, it is not the foreigners, it is not the whites. Indeed, the real problem was not even apartheid or even colonialism. The biggest problem facing humanity today, yesterday and tomorrow is capitalism. The system that puts profit before the needs of the people. The system of exploitation, of the extraction of surplus value from labor. So the system of private ownership of land, of factories, of mines. As Karl Marx put it, the private ownership and control of the means of production, the means of making life, of livelihoods. So apartheid was a form of capitalism. It was racial capitalism. Colonialism was central to the development of capitalism. Slavery happened because of capitalism. Millions of African people were taken by force to the Americas to work for free there. Under capitalism, the rich get richer, the poor poorer. The land, those who had land before become landless. Those who had homes before, they become homeless. The needs of ordinary people do not matter under this system. What matters is what is good for the capitalist class, for profits, what is good for the market. Now, Karl Marx said the history of society is the history of class struggle, the rich fighting the poor, the colonizer fighting the colonized, the exploiter against the exploited. This is the story of capitalism. It is a system of division, class division, racial division, gender division, national division. So it's a system which thrives and works on division. So when it divides, it makes sure that the wealth, the power is therefore concentrated on one pole, whereas the other pole doesn't have the power or the wealth. It gets exploited. Thus, we have a division between the capitalist class and the working class, and all the power and wealth is in the hands, and ownership is in the hands of the capitalist class. We have a division of the world into rich countries and poor countries, of colonizing countries, imperialist countries, and dominated countries. Now, we're talking about an important division that capitalism imposes on society. Today is the division between the urban areas and the rural areas. Capitalism builds cities and towns. That is how it works. The production of wealth, of most of the goods and services, of labor, of money, of banks, all these are concentrated in the cities and the towns. In other words, the capitalists control the cities, they control the factories, they control the land in the cities, they control what is called prime land, the richest land, the best located land, as the previous speaker was saying, the land where you find the most expensive houses. So the problem of land reform in the cities is that all the prime land, the land worth having, the land worth fighting for, is in the hands of the capitalist class. The only way to get that land is to fight against the capitalist class. And as you heard from Comrade Sizani, when you do that, then they they kill you, bullets and all that. Ultimately, and this is the truth, it's a sad truth, it's a harsh truth. The only way to get that land is to destroy the system of private ownership of land. Now, when we look at urban land reform in post-apartheid under ANC, we can see why now the ANC government, the government of liberation, has failed to redistribute land in the urban areas. Why? Because the ANC government is a capitalist government. It's a bourgeois government. Yes, the ANC will agree it led the struggle against apartheid, but the victory over apartheid was based on a deal, a secret deal. The bosses said, Oppenheimer said, we will support you taking power on condition that you allow capitalism to continue. You allow private property to continue. It's even written in the constitution of the country. You must make sure that the wealth remains under capitalist control, that the land in the rural areas, in the urban areas, remains in our hands as the bosses. So that is why the ANC government has failed and will continue to fail. Of course, the failure is bigger in the urban areas, than in the rural areas in terms of land restitution, land redistribution, because the cities are the citadels of capitalism. The cities are the palaces of the capitalist class. So, good people, you can sit here and do a list of all the things that the ANC government has not done about land reform in the urban areas or even the rural areas. We can sit here and do a list of all the policies that the ANC has come up with which have failed to achieve meaningful urban land reform. We can even sit here and discuss how a good policy was good, but how the problem was implementation, etc., etc. The only result will be a broken heart. In fact, it reminds me of a song which says, "How can you heal a broken heart?" So there's a line in the song where the singer asks, how can a loser become a winner? How can a capitalist government take away the wealth and power of the bosses? So just to wind up, recently we saw the attacks on the malls, the burning, the looting. What was happening? From the point of view of the capitalist class, what was happening was that the masses were attacking private property. The masses were taking, without paying, the goods in the shops. Yes, these were acts of desperation and in some instances of organized crime and political conspiracies. But we must not lose a bigger lesson. The time will come, good people. The time must come when the masses will rise up and say, enough is enough with your private property system. We're taking by force what we need. We're taking the factories, the mines, the farms, big shops, and the malls. We're taking the land in the rural areas and the urban areas. And why are we taking it? Because we need it in order to live. Because without all these things, we are suffering, we are hungry, we are dying every day. Karl Marx said the working class is the revolutionary class. He meant that the masses have the power to change history. It is the homeless who can end homelessness. It is the hungry who can end hunger. It is the landless who can end landlessness. Taking the land by force is not a dream. It is not something that will happen, sometime in the future, like the socialism of the SACP. It is happening already. We had the leader of Abatlabism John Dolo. All the shacks and shack settlements you see in Johannesburg, Cape Town, eThekwini, Gqeberha, everywhere. Indeed, even in Brazil, Sao Paulo, the favelas in Rio de Janeiro, all those informal settlements are there because the masses took the land mostly by force and against the law of private property. So, good comrades, what we have to do, we have to be clear who is the enemy. We have to draw the class line. We have to oppose the capitalists and their capitalist ideology. We must not do what the capitalist is doing. We must not think like them. As Comrade Sizani said, we are against capitalist individualism. We cannot, for example, to do what is called shack farming, where we start to use our AMA committee, which run the shacks, to make money for ourselves, to exploit other shack dwellers. When we start to sell plots of land after we've occupied the land, where we start to rent out shacks with the intention of making a profit. Some AMA committees, sometimes the ones I know are ANC and Sanko comrades, but they're not the only ones. They do this. So when we do this, it means we are abandoning the vision of a different society, of socialism. We are doing what the ANC has done. We are no longer fighting for a different future, but our actions help the capitalist class to keep their wealth and power, to grow stronger and continue to exploit us. The only way forward in the struggle for land in the urban areas is to organize the law of private property and to always remember that the working class, the masses, the ordinary people, they have got the power to change history. Getting our land back in the urban areas and in the rural areas will require confronting, fighting, and defeating the power of capital. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. Those were very powerful presentations by all three of you, which actually gave us a picture of what is actually happening within these urban city areas. I think now we shall take questions from the floor. So the first question comes from Frankwit Juster, and I'm not sure who this question is addressed to, but maybe you, Ma'am, or Ma'am Nomsa. It says, do you have a database for those who have already received RDP houses? Are you able to answer that?
Hello again. For my side, I can't give the clear answer to this question for the RDP houses, but I know that few RDP houses have been given to few elites from the ruling party. As I was saying, that they are the ones who are preferably given the chance to get the RDP firstly, those who are the card carriers of the ANC party.
Okay. And then our next question is from Boa Monjani. May we have it up, please? He says capitalism has faces and addresses. We can't talk of it as something abstracto. It's very concrete indeed. We know who the 99% are. That sounded like a comment. Trevor, do you want to respond to this particular comment?
Yeah, it's thank you, Monjani. Yeah, you see, the problem is sometimes we talk of white monopoly capital. It's important to talk that way because our problem is the aspirant black bourgeoisie. Our president is a billionaire. So the corruption in the upper echelons of the ANC is because the ANC leaders have embraced the capitalist individualism, self-enrichment. So it's true. So now all that the bosses do is they give money to the top guys, and then the system continues to make the poor get poorer.
Absolutely. Our next question comes from Ruth Hall. And she says, would each speaker like to suggest a specific target for what would constitute real progress towards equitable access to land in and around South Africa's towns and cities?
For me, I think real progress would be perhaps the eradication of informal settlements, or perhaps the land that these informal settlements are on be given to the people that are occupying that land. For people who are occupying buildings in our cities, so-called illegally, to be allowed to occupy these buildings legally and be given titles to these buildings. That would be a first step that is doable, in my opinion. It's not as difficult as, say, trying to do something a bit more large scale. This is very close. This is doable. It's a low-hanging fruit. Thank you.
Trevor, or I think that was the previous question was posed to all speakers. May you kindly, attempt to respond if you can?
Yeah, that's why I was talking about we can sit here and do a list of all the cities and the little things we can tweak here, tweak there, change that policy, the Development Facilitation Act. But the problem here is the very structure of the system under which we live. So as long as capitalists are given the right to control the land which they stole under colonialism, there is just no solution. So I would think that a big step would be when we nationalize the land, take it over, and actually allow, poor people, ordinary people, to have at least a toehold into the cities. Yeah.
Ma'am Suzanne?
I think they institutionalize the right to land. The right to land should be constitutionalized, because when we see in our constitution, we see the section 26 speaks about the right to housing, but section 25 speaks about the right to property. why it should be called the right to property. Because if you talk about the property, it's something that you can buy, it's something that you can sell. We wish that the right to land should be constitutionalized. And also, we wish that the land should not be managed with the few elites, but it should be democratically managed. So even the poor people from South Africa should be involved in managing the land, not only the few elites, rich elites. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. We are running ahead of schedule. Please do remember to join in the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag access to land and also access to land now, as demonstrated on the bottom of your screen. And also, please do ask any questions or make any comments with regards to this discussion this afternoon. Our next question is from Ruth Hall. Are there examples of urban struggles elsewhere in the world that inspire your movements? I think this one is particularly for Umam Sizane. And what successes have there been in disrupting urban land inequality? And also Shakira as an activist is.
Thanks for that question. Yes, there are other movements that inspire us as Abahlali baseMjondolo, like the movement that is in Brazil, where they occupy land for farming. They really inspire us, although they also faced the evictions like us as Abahlali baseMjondolo, but they inspire us. Yes, there is the landless movement that is in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, that we work close with them, because we believe that if we do have this solidarity internationally, it could help us to inspire each other, because they are also learning from our experiences, and also we are learning from their experiences. I thank you.
Thank you. Shakira?
I know Professor Ruth Hall said internationally, but we take our inspiration from a very local land movement, which is Reclaim the City. We've learned a lot from their work and how they've gone about to occupy and then build this alternative form of community within these occupations, as well as the Inner City Federation in Johannesburg as well. We've also learned a lot from their work and how they've dealt with issues with municipalities on building occupations within the inner city of Johannesburg. And we've also been able to exchange a lot of information with them. It is these movements within South Africa that we have learned a lot, that we have interacted a lot with, that have changed some of the way we do things within our own movements in the side of Gauteng. Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor, do you also want to respond to that? Is there a particular movement that we should look up to?
Yeah, I'll go back to history, because sometimes, when things don't work out the way it was planned, then we don't learn any lessons from that. But we learn lessons when we succeed or we fail. Sometimes we learn better when we fail. So I think what happened in Russia in 1917, we found that there was a revolution where the people said, we are taking power. And then the peasants in the rural areas, they took over the land of the landlords. They drove the landlords out and took over the land, and the land became peasant land. In the urban areas, workers, ordinary people, took over the factories and the mines and instituted a workers' government. Of course, 70 years later, communism collapsed, but that act should inspire us that it is possible, it can be done. All that you can do is to study that experience and make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes.
Absolutely. Now, our next question from the floor is a question from Chris DeVette. And he says, would it make sense to understand land invasions as a as cumulative parts of an ongoing revolution in terms of the way Trevor Ngwane has spoken about the need for overturning capitalism? Trevor?
Yes, even this, attacking the malls, the way I saw it was, but the people have been doing this. They've been banning libraries, banning clinics. Of course, we condemn it. Why are you banning a library? Banning town halls, municipal halls, banning councillors and the mayor's houses. It's been happening consistently since 2004. It's just that now it happened on one day and it attacked, the hallowed and most respected malls of the bourgeoisie. So, those community struggles, those community protests, they happen, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 a day. Can you see? It is indeed cumulative. And one day it's going to explode like it exploded with the looting. It's just that with the looting, there was no vision of transformation. So we should be with the looters and say, no, next time, don't burn it down, take it over. Let us run pick and pay so that we can have cheap bread, we can have cheap clothes. I think that indeed, taking over of the land, what Abashabas and Jondo are doing, what all the shack dwellers are doing is part of that struggle against private ownership of land, especially urban land.
So we need to have like a shared vision of transformation, you're saying. Our next question is from Nganiso Gumede. Mama Sizani and Shakira, you indicated that land reform program should take a bottom-up approach. In that approach, does the state have a role to play?
In my approach, because first and foremost, I just want the land that is in the custodianship of the state to be redistributed first before we start looking at privately owned land, because the state actually has a lot of land in its hands. In that approach, we actually do need the state to give us that land. We need the state to say, these are our books, this is the amount of land that is within our custodianship. We can help you actually roll out this land. I think the people can maybe be in charge of the process to make sure that it runs as smoothly and quickly as possible. But otherwise, we do need the state to play ball and open their books and show us the land that is within the custodianship of the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again. Can I start with the last question, Comrade Katlewo? I have seen something there with a viewer. I don't know whether is he or she, but she or he.
Yes.
Yes, talked about the land invasion. I just wanna correct that, because as abahlali basemjondolo, we don't believe when people say we are invading. We are occupying, we are not invading. Because when you talk about invasion, it's something that is taken by force, while people who invaded our land from our grandfathers, they are the ones who invaded our lands. So we're just occupying, not invading the land. So the way we are doing it to fight this system of capitalism, the system of those colonialists who came here and stole our land. So yes, when we speak about the bottom-up system, the state will be involved there. What we don't like is that the state is taking the decision for people. The state should involve people from the grassroots, in each and every decision they are making in our country, we should be involved. The problem is the state is not involving us in anything. They're just imposing things to us. So we don't want the decision. They mustn't take any decision for us, but we must be involved in any decision that the state is taking. So in our Basam we used to say that there is nothing for us without us. We want to be involved in every decision making. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mama Suzanne. That was very powerful indeed. Our next question comes from Onduduzo Majosi. Can we have it up, please? Okay. Why has the people-driven reforms emerged as disseminated acts here? And they, rather than just one joint struggle or uprising beyond movements, cities, and national boundaries. Is there anybody who would like to tackle this very big question for us?
Okay.
Yes, Trevor.
Yeah, so, what Abahlali baseMjondolo are trying to do, they're trying to unite all the shack dwellers of South Africa into one movement. And if they have their own movement somewhere, maybe to have coalitions where they speak and fight with one voice. But of course, just as there are people suffering in the urban areas, there are people suffering in the rural areas. So we have to form coalitions and organizations which unite us with those in the rural areas. And also remember, many of the people who live in shacks, some of them are casually employed, some are unemployed. So there's also a need for the trade unions to come in and link up and be part of a struggle, to challenge what Comrade Sizani called the commodification of land. So I think maybe the real problem now is that we don't have a strong mass working class movement which is speaking with one voice and demanding, a fundamental change. But maybe gradually we'll reach that.
Okay. We've been talking about, forms or ways to access land, from below. But I just want to know what should the state learn from these strategies from below, and what should be the response of the state right now? Because we do say, yes, the system is not working for us. The main enemy is capitalism. We are divided, and the people, the cities are the palaces of the capitalist, as you put it, Trevor Ngwane. But what is the alternative then? That's a question coming from me. Trevor?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, look, the alternative is a people's government, a working class government. So when we say, you hear even EFF talks about nationalization. I even mentioned it. But like Comrade Sizani was saying, we should say nationalization under workers' control, under people's control. So the people on the ground must have a say over what happens. Nothing for us, about us, without us. So also, I don't think that, like I said with that song, how can a loser become a winner? I don't think that the ANC, as long as it is a bourgeois political party committed to making the rich richer, of course, I mean, it has to, because it also wants votes. So it will do certain things to make people happy, food parcels, this and that. But essentially, ultimately, it serves, the bosses. So I think we have to organize and replace this government of the bosses with the government of ordinary people, the government of the working class, When I talk about the working class, I mean all those who don't own capital. So it involves also the unemployed and the employed.
Thank you very much. We also have another question from ELT. Thank you. And he says, can we use cooperatives to improve the lives using the land under traditional leadership? This needs the traditional leadership to partner with the private sector to ensure access to funding. Organizations like Abahlali Basemjondolo should be a conduit for information. Can we also explore alternative construction technology to eradicate the lack of housing technology like Moladi? Okay, so yeah, that's basically his our cooperatives like an answer to improving the lives of those using the land under traditional leadership. Is there somebody who may be able to tackle that question by EL? Trevor?
Yeah, so in the rural areas, the problem is exactly that you find that the land is controlled by chiefs. Okay, it's a legacy of the way of different types of or forms of land ownership. Okay, yeah, and it's not the case that those types of land ownership must be thrown aside and be replaced by capitalist private ownership and title deeds. And, the old system from the old days, there was communal ownership in the sense that you had land where everyone's cows can graze, what we can call the commons. And then you'd have your own homestead, umdeni, where you have your own land, piece of land for your household. So, also you can find that we had something called ilima, where people come together now and again to do cooperative farming. So that's the basis of cooperatives, where we actually try and do things collectively. But of course, one problem we find with traditional leaders, especially the laws which the ANC government is coming up with, is that they are anti-woman. So they give too much power to the men. They are patriarchal. So if we are going to continue working with the chiefs, with traditional leadership, we have to factor in gender equality and other progressive measures to actually eradicate all forms of oppression and exploitation.
Okay. Our next question it's from Deborah Potts, and she's asking, what preferences do panel members, so this is a question that is posed to all of you, have for the type of land tenure? Is it, example, individual household ownership, cooperative ownership, nationalized land, etc., that is suitable for land reform for urban housing? So yes. So what sort of tenure do you prefer, basically? Or Mama Sizane?
Talibasam Jondolo, we don't believe in individualism ownership, but we believe in collectivism, because we believe that if a person could get an individualism tenure, it's going to be easy for that person to sell that land anytime if she or he wishes to sell it. But we don't believe in individualism, but we believe in collectivism. Thank you.
And Shakira, your response? Which tenure preference should urban households have?
Wrong, Shakir.
Shakira? Okay, you're muted. Shakira, you're muted?
No, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
A lot like Umam Sizani, I think it will depend on the type of land it is and the type of housing situation it is. If it's like a building that can house more than one family, then collectivism can apply in such instances. But if it's a building that is more of a parcel of land for a single family to be able to build a house, then in that instance, I believe a title deed would be essential for that family in order for them to be able to use the land for more than just housing, but to be able to generate forms of income outside of just having a space for them to live. So I'm two ways about it. For me, it will always depend on the type of housing that is being spoken about. Thank you.
Okay. Trevor, your opinion.
Yeah, well, I think, I go with nationalized and under workers' control because, as far as I can tell, if you have a bond, it's not really your house, it belongs to the bank. So, these forms of individual ownership under capitalism don't serve us at all. In fact, they only serve the bosses, who can evict you, throw you around. So what we need is what I think Mama Susan was suggesting. We need collective ownership with certain guarantees. So this is what is happening in the old days. It's not that, your household was yours. It was still under the king or the chief, but you had certain guarantees which the community knew about and which even the chief could not break. So they say, we know that land over there umuzi kaSibiya loyo. And then when there are disputes, you have people coming in to be witness, to say, yes, we knew Sibiya, and his firstborn son and daughter was so and so. So I think that as long as there are guarantees for the individual and the individual family, you'll get basic services. When you want to do anything with your house, you can do it. Then we can have a nationalized collective form of ownership where we control the state or the people who are in charge.
But that would require a particular state that is able, right, that has the capacity to drive that. In your view, the current state, would it be able to drive that?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But you can still put demands on it because remember, the change won't come from the rich. The change won't come from the ANC fat cats. It will come from the ground. So what we do is we put common demands and we all fight behind those common demands. Just now, after the attacks on the malls, we hear now the ANC saying, maybe we can look at the basic income grant. So what we all have to do now is to fight for that basic income grant and force them to give us that basic income grant. So I don't think that this government, the government of the ANC, of the capitalists, will do it willingly. It's just that people get tired of always having to force, to fight and struggle to make the government do what they want. That is why ultimately the solution is to replace the government with a people's government, a working class government.
Well, thank you. May we have our next, is there anybody who wants to respond also to that question? Is force or fighting, or I don't know how to put it, the only way that we can get change and access to land, as Trevor has put it? Shakira or Mama Sizan? Are there no other means that we could use? Maybe
For my side, I don't think there are other means. What Trevor has said right now is the answer to all this. To replace this government, this selfish government, because our government is so selfish, to replace them and put the government that will work close to the people. The government that will not think for the people, but the government that will work for the people, the government for the working class. Yes.
And Shakira? Yes, you're unmuted.
I agree with Mam Suzanne and Trevor as well. We need a more responsive government to the people for some of these things. The current government, I don't think it will work with some of these things because of the level of corruption that is almost endemic in there.
And may we please have our last question for us? Okay, we all agree, this is from Constance Mokhali. We all agree that individual titling is not the way to go. So if not nationalization, what is the alternative appropriate model that we can call for land tenure? So apart from nationalization, what other alternative is there?
Well, look, in the world, especially countries like Brazil, but even a bit Scandinavian countries, there has been this idea that, Comrade Cesar was talking about the commodification of land. Yeah. So what people say is that, we don't have to look at the value of land in terms of exchange value, how much it costs, how much money, what price can it get on the market. We should focus on use value. How is the land being used? So some land is used for, I think someone was talking about communal gardening. Okay, yeah. So some land is used, for example, with this fight against climate change, as a green lung where we plant, trees so that the earth can breathe because the capitalists are killing it. So this is the way it goes. So we don't look at land in terms of the price, but we have forms of land tenure based on functionality, on usefulness to the community, not to one individual, but to all of us. So that is why you can have land, to help the community do this thing, that thing, and then that form of tenureship, of ownership, will be, I think, collective rather than individual.
And Shakira, do you want to respond? What's an alternative? Constance Mokhale is asking, what is an alternative appropriate model apart from nationalization?
I actually agree with Trevor. The reason why we find ourselves here is because of commodification of land and land being treated as a capitalist entity to begin with. I think if we scaled back on the commodification of land or the land being used to generate profits for individuals and start using the land for social value, then we will see people being able to get the land that they need for and be able to take care of their needs and not accumulate land solely for the purpose of being able to generate profits later. Now everybody will basically be taken care of in that sense.
Ma'am Susanna? We're still
Comrade Chair, I will not say much about this. I will only say just one sentence that social value should come before the commercial value. That's, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, all. I'll just read what Boa Monjani from the floor is saying in response to this. He says that occupy the state alongside the land expropriation and nationalization under neoliberal state won't quite work. In fact, it will result in counter-revolutionary processes. So he does not think that nationalization under this neoliberal state would actually work. But nonetheless, I think we have run out of time. Any last remarks from the three of you?
For my side, my last words that I would say, I just wish that all working class, we should speak with one voice. All working class, we should unite and agitate and fight against this system of capitalism. Because our aim as working class is to condemn this system of capitalism. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Trevor?
Well, all I want to say in support of what the comrade is saying is that there is this power. There is a power of the working class, of ordinary people. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't see it. So we have to build this power. And this power is so great, it's so big, that it can overthrow the exploiter and you can create a better world.
And Shakira?
I believe Mam Suzanne and Trevor have actually covered me, but I fully agree with the working class and the left being better at organizing in order for us to be able to reach a stage where we are not talking about the equitable access to land anymore, because it would have been done.
Well, thank you all for participating in this very insightful webinar, and thank you also to all our participants for giving us your questions. But be on the lookout for the webinar if you do want to catch up with it later. For the next webinar, please be on the lookout for adverts as to when that will be taking place. Thank you all for tuning in, and goodbye.